Before we start today's video, just want to give a quick warning that today's story is going to contain a lot of details that might be very hard for people to make it through. Similar to cases like Caroline Beale, I expect that people are going to have different opinions, and of course, everybody's welcome to those. But we have to remember that we're discussing a child here, and that always is, of course, the most important thing. And I always want to make sure you guys know what's coming, because I know that some stories and certain details can be very triggering for some. It was very hard for me to write this story, so I'd imagine that it's going to be very hard to listen to. So before jumping in, please do keep that in mind. Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
Del Calendario is charged with her daughter Jailene's murder.
Court documents show the 31-year-old admitted to leaving her baby home alone June 8th while she went on vacation to Puerto Rico and Detroit. When Calendario returned home 8 days later, police say she found Jailene unresponsive.
A really horrific story out of New Mexico. Watch as a woman pulls up to the dumpsters, grabs a black bag from the back passenger door and throws it in the trash. Later that night, some dumpster divers stumbled upon the bag. Realizing there was a baby inside, they rescued the infant and frantically called police.
A Fullerton woman is charged today with abandoning her baby in a gas station trash can. That's 25-year-old Vanessa Maldonado. She faces attempted murder and child abuse.
Tonight, a northern Kent County couple is charged with felony murder and child abuse in the starvation death of their 10-month-old daughter.
Mary Welch died Thursday in the family's home near Cedar Springs, a death later ruled a homicide. And now we're learning the couple's religious beliefs are a reason they didn't get medical help.
The baby's dead. She killed the kid.
Tense moments captured by police body cam video.
Like, how big is the baby?
It's full term.
What? 9 months? Nothing was crying.
A lifeless baby found dumped inside of a hospital trash can.
She just had it. She had it in the bathroom. Was what happened.
When I picked up the trash, I thought it was heavy, and so I started looking in there. And on the very bottom, she had it covered with some toilet paper.
All over the world, for decades, we've heard many stories that speak of innocent children who've been abandoned, and others who've had their lives taken at the hands of their own parents before even getting a chance to live. It still happens today, and every time it does, we're left questioning why and how anyone could ever do such a thing. In October of 1993, residents of Hempstead, Long Island would find their neighborhood crawling with investigators when a sickening and disturbing secret was brought to light. The horrifying ordeal involved two people who lived right there, among them. But the two individuals in question were not victims. They were monsters who committed a cruel and unthinkable act. And today, we remember the newborn baby girl who paid with her life and never even had a chance to feel love. And the reason behind it all will deeply upset anybody who's listening. On today's episode of Evil Intentions, this is The Heartless, the story of baby Bridget.
Franco has been charged with unlawful disposal of a body after he allegedly dug the grave for a child buried alive.
Brigid Galino was born on June 9th of 1993 on Long Island, New York. Today's story takes us to Nassau County, Long Island, specifically the town of Hempstead. In the early 90s, the population here would have been around 730,000 residents. It's one of the state's oldest towns, dating back to the mid-1600s. The area does well when it comes to tourism, with people making their way there to visit the many parks, museums, and historical sites the town offers. locals find themselves enjoying it all. That includes visits to the famous Jones Beach during those hot summer days. At the time of this video's release, it's early July, and the tri-state area has already experienced its first heat wave of the year. Being within close proximity to the water is a huge plus for those who call Hempstead home. Among those residents who lived here was a newlywed couple by the name of Erbalina Emiliano, 23 years old, and Fortino Perez, 28. They resided at 36 Miller Place, along with a man named Margarito Franco, 31. He was Fortino's brother. The three were living in a room at what was a rooming house at the time, and while here, they rented the space for $100 a month. The three didn't really know too many neighbors, but according to their landlord, they were known to be very nice and very quiet, normally keeping to themselves. The three hailed from the town of Santiago Tepetlapa in Oaxaca, Mexico, and were always in constant communication with their family back home, often receiving mail from loved ones and calling them every chance they could. Family just wanted to know how things were going for the couple, being newly married and all. While the couple made that commitment to one another, they hadn't known each other as well as you might expect. Despite coming from the same town and being sweethearts when they were younger, they weren't particularly close or knew each other on that level. It was one of those things where they liked each other and were sweet to one another, but it didn't go beyond that, what some may call puppy love. But as adults, they hadn't been involved in that way. When they arrived in New York, they both lived in Hempstead, like others who made the same journey before them, and they would sometimes separately take the trip back home to visit their families. It would be in January of 1993, after one of those visits back home, when Emiliano and Perez, both in Mexico at the same time, would get to know each other a bit better, and that's when they started their relationship. From there, things moved very quickly, and by April of 1993, they were married. Toward the end of May into early June of 1993, Emiliano and Perez left Mexico and came back to Nassau County, where they would reside at 21 Union Place for a short while, and soon after to 36 Miller Place. Perez would end up getting a job as a kitchen worker at a cafe in Baldwin, New York, where he seemed to fit in with the rest of the workers. Others at the job described him as always being a hard worker. The job didn't pay much at the time, but every little bit helped, especially because later on, in October of 1993, the couple realized that they might be expecting their first child together. The couple was sure that they had a baby on the way because all the signs were there. So on Monday, October 25th of 1993, Erbalina Emiliano would visit Nassau County Medical Center's women's health offices for a prenatal exam. She wanted to be sure that she was in fact pregnant, and that if she was, everything was going well with the pregnancy. But it's here that this story takes a very dark and morbid turn. On this day, Erbalina saw a doctor and told her about her symptoms. Doctors ran several tests, including a pelvic exam, urinalysis, and an ultrasound. The couple was right. She was 3 months pregnant, and all looked to be normal with the pregnancy. Great news for the couple. But while at the hospital, Erbalina would end up seeing some workers that remembered her from the last time she had a baby, only a few months prior, in June of 1993. You see, Erbalina was more than familiar with this place. She had delivered a baby here before. The workers, who were always happy to see a healthy woman back in their offices, asked her how her child, a baby girl, was doing. The answer they received left them more than a little surprised. She would tell the doctor and other workers that the baby was dead. She was quite vague about how the child died and couldn't really give a reason. She didn't reveal much, except for one very disturbing piece of info. She told the doctor that the baby had died months ago and she was buried in her very own backyard. Not somewhere suitable for a proper burial, just buried beneath the dirt behind her home. It was enough to sicken the doctor and made her question everything. When that baby left the hospital with her mother a few months earlier, the baby was perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. Emiliano showed no emotion as she explained that her child was dead. This, paired with the mysterious death of the child, of course, raised major suspicions. The doctor running tests on her would contact authorities that same day. She didn't want to be interviewed or questioned, but she told them what she knew, that a woman came to the hospital and told her and others that the baby she gave birth to was dead. That same day, Fortino Perez was picked up by authorities at his job so that he could be questioned. A few hours later, Herbalina Emiliano was arrested at a friend's house that she had been visiting so that she too could be questioned. The couple was interrogated for hours about everything involving that baby. Not the baby growing inside of Herbalina's womb, but the one who'd apparently already passed away. They were given a number of stories. One story was that the newborn baby passed away during a feeding, and after, they took it upon themselves to bury that baby. Now, when it comes to the part about feeding, although rare, this is something that can happen. But there was something about the way Emiliano and Perez answered these questions, something about the way they behaved. They spoke with no emotion, no anger. It was strange, especially when you'd expect them to be emotional after being asked about this child. Then they gave their second story, and this one was much darker. Emiliano would tell authorities that when the baby was born, she and Perez thought to themselves they didn't want this baby anymore. So together, they decided that they would just starve the baby. Just about the coldest thing you could ever imagine. A defenseless baby left so hungry that her body would just shut down, dying as a result. But as upsetting and horrific as that story was, the third story they gave authorities, the truth. This they couldn't wrap their head around. On June 11th of 1993, just 2 days after the baby's birth, Fortino Perez took a trip to Nassau County Medical Center in a taxi. He went there to pick up Emiliano and the baby. Once they were ready to go, they got into the taxi, and Perez told the driver to take them straight to 21 Union Place in Hempstead, where they lived at the time. Once they arrived, the couple went directly to the back of the home, and waiting for them there was a freshly dug grave. The hole in the dirt was made by Margarito Franco, Perez's brother. Without a second thought, the baby was thrown into the hole, and while she was still alive, confused and crying out, the couple would begin to shovel dirt into the hole, covering the baby's small body with 18 inches of dirt, leaving her to suffocate and die right in the backyard. The couple apparently came to New York about a week before the child was born in order to remain more anonymous. They barely knew anyone in the States. They figured nobody would ever find out. The truth was an awful pill to swallow, but authorities finally felt like this had to be the true story, because when asked about the details separately, both Perez and Emiliano confessed to what they had done, and it all added up. All that was left was confirming it by going to where the child was said to be buried. Authorities would go to 21 Union Place at around 9 a.m. on October 26 of 1993, and they went straight to the backyard, where they carefully dug, looking for a baby's small body. And sure enough, at around 11 a.m., they found exactly that. Under nearly 2 feet of mud and dirt were the remains of a newborn baby. She was dressed in a pink outfit, still wearing the hospital bracelet on her wrist. It showed that she was 6 pounds and 8 ounces. A pink pacifier was where her mouth used to be. Her body was badly decomposed. The sickening story that authorities were told turned out to be true, and the reason why this was done left them angry and in disbelief. Emiliano would tell detectives that the reason for them burying this child alive was because Perez wasn't the father. You see, before all of this, while in New York in 1991, Emiliano began dating a man named Enrique, who also lived in Hempstead. They dated until late 1992, when Emiliano went back to Mexico. Just a few months after this, in January of 1993, she began dating Perez, but she was already pregnant with Enrique's child. She became pregnant in September of 1992, which meant that when she married Perez in April of 1993, she was already 7 months pregnant from her previous boyfriend. They buried the baby in order to, quote, spare Perez the embarrassment of raising another man's child, and also so that the child wouldn't come between them, as cold as can be. Perez told authorities he hadn't known she was pregnant. Emiliano told him of her pregnancy a few weeks after they got married, and as soon as he learned about it, They started to make plans on how to get rid of the baby whenever it was born. Enrique, who fathered the child, stated that when he first learned of Emiliano being pregnant, he told her he would give her the money to terminate the pregnancy. So, he sent her $250 while she was in Mexico, and sometime later, when he saw her again, she told him that she was still pregnant. She never explained why she didn't follow through with the procedure. He stated he never led her to believe that they'd ever be together or have a family together. Their relationship was mainly physical, but he still played a major role. It was careless thinking on his part to believe that the promise of a visit to the clinic would fix everything. Definitely not the way to go about that. But rather than give the baby up for adoption, drop the baby off at a safe haven, or even leave the child with someone at the hospital, a cold-blooded burial is all Emiliano and Perez could think of. For this, they would be facing charges of second-degree murder. This one picture of the innocent child is the only one ever taken, just a few hours after her birth, and she didn't even have a name. The news of all of this shocked residents who lived near the couple. At first, they had no idea why so many officers had found themselves at this location, digging, searching for something. But once those details were made public, it was extremely hard to accept. Even those who didn't know the couple or the child found themselves grieving and shedding tears for the innocent life lost. They couldn't believe something like this would ever happen here. Just about a month after the discovery was made, on Friday, November 5th of 1993, a private service was held for the innocent child at St. Brigid's Roman Catholic Church in Westbury, New York. For the first time, the 2-day-old baby girl, who was left to die alone, had a name. She was named after the church, Brigid, Galino, Emiliano. The funeral arrangements for baby Bridget were completed by Emiliano's brothers, while the funds for the burial plot were donated by the church. Defense attorneys would request permission for Erbelina Emiliano to attend the baby service, and obviously, she was denied. The news of something so horrific happening in this neighborhood was hard to fathom. Many who lived there at the time just couldn't understand how this all happened without anyone ever suspecting a thing. But it had, and pretty soon after, the rest of New York and the tri-state area will learn of the awful details.
31-year-old Margarito Franco has been charged with unlawful disposal of a body after he allegedly dug the grave for a child buried alive. Police say Franco is the brother of Fortino Perez. Police say Perez and his wife are under arrest for killing their 2-day-old infant. The child apparently wasn't fathered by Perez. To save embarrassment, Perez and the child's mother, Erbelina Emiliano, decided to bury the infant behind a rooming house in Hempstead.
Very clear evidence tonight of violence against a suspect in the case of a baby who was buried alive. Fortino Perez said at his arraignment today he's been beaten twice by inmates at the Nassau County Jail since he was arrested on Monday. He and his wife are charged with burying her newborn daughter alive because she had been fathered by another man. Perez and his wife are tonight in protective custody.
During Fortino Perez's trial in 1994, his defense team would shift the blame over to Emiliano, stating that she willingly went along with this plan to get rid of the baby, to spare Perez the shame of raising another man's child. Like they said when they were first questioned, it would do no good. In December of 1994, Fortino Perez was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison after being convicted of second-degree murder. In April of 1994, Emiliano, who'd been pregnant with Perez's child throughout all of this, would give birth to her new baby while in prison. The child was quickly handed over to the Nassau County Department of Social Services to be put in foster care. By June of 1995, a trial for Erbelina Emiliano was well underway, and here, the defense team revealed the strategy that they would be going with. Her defense attorney stated that she wasn't this cold-blooded killer the media painted her as. She was a victim. It was said that she was a battered and frightened wife with a very low IQ and the intelligence of a 6-year-old who wasn't fully aware of what she was doing. They stated she was depressed, fearful, and not thinking like herself. The new version of the story given at trial was that when the baby was born, Emiliano would tell Perez that she was going to keep her baby, and if he didn't love her with her child, then she would be going to live with her brothers. According to her, Perez told her that he had no problem with the baby. He was only kidding all the times they made plans to take her life. He was going to love and care for them both. After saying this, he leaned over, kissed the baby on the forehead, and they were on their way home. Emiliano would then say that Perez forced her back into the house where he beat her and violated her. And then he said that she had better never say a word about what took place. She said she was terrified. But in the same trial, she would also say that when she first revealed her pregnancy to Perez, he was so filled with rage that he tried to kill the baby by jumping on her stomach. It's unclear why she felt he would have this sudden change of heart, and he was clearly very serious about those threats. Her attorneys would continue to focus on her being too terrified to report the crime, and so she went along with it, although it had already been stated from the both of them that they planned this far in advance. Emiliano would take the one picture of the baby and through an interpreter said the following: "This is a picture of my daughter taken in the hospital. I love my daughter. I loved you, my beautiful daughter." She then handed the picture to the bailiff to be entered into evidence. Defense lawyers would argue that Emiliano had absolutely no part in the burial, but prosecutors would say that given her confession, she had everything to do with it. They both planned it. She allowed it to happen, and she never tried to tell authorities about it. The battered wife syndrome defense had been used many times before and brought back ugly memories of one high-profile case. It was used by children's book author Hedda Nussbaum in 1988 in the case of Elizabeth Lisa Launders, also known as Lisa Steinberg. In that case, Nussbaum stated that she lived in constant fear of her partner, Joel Steinberg, and that's why she waited so long to get the badly abused child help, resulting in the 6-year-old's tragic death. But in this case, there wasn't much evidence of Emiliano being a battered wife. Neighbors never witnessed that sort of thing where the couple lived, and her body wasn't covered in bruises like others. Of course, this didn't mean it wasn't true, but prosecutors felt that this was key information and needed to be considered. They would also claim that when it came to her ex-boyfriend, Enrique, the child's father, she didn't want to get into a physical relationship, but holding hands and kissing led to one. This was also said to be after he promised that he would pay for the procedure if by chance she did become pregnant. Experts were called in to testify about whether or not Emiliano was really an innocent victim in all of this, or if she was a willing participant. Also called to the stand was Enrique. He stated once again that he sent her money as promised, and she never went to see a doctor about the procedure. He never led her to believe he would marry her or start a family with her, and he had no idea why she kept the child, only to do something so incredibly horrific to her. Jurors were torn as they listened, knowing that he too played a role by so carelessly bringing a child into this world. Even after going on the stand to discuss the grim details, he told reporters that he wasn't even sure if the child was truly his. On July 20th of 1995, after 3 days of deliberation and several moments when the jury wasn't able to come to a decision, the verdict was in. Herbelina Emiliano was found guilty for her part in the slaying of her own child. The jury simply didn't believe that she was just someone who feared for her life. She would be sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. Her defense lawyers were disappointed in the outcome, saying she was an innocent victim and calling the decision an abomination. The assistant district attorney also voiced her disappointment, saying Emiliano deserved nothing but the maximum sentence of 25 years to life in prison. She would say the following: "She shouldn't get any benefits because she is a woman. She was at least as involved as Perez in killing the most helpless, innocent victim. She participated in burying her own flesh and blood, violating the most basic tenets of motherhood." Emiliano was hysterical as her sentence was read out to the courtroom. She clutched a rosary as tears ran down her face, as if she was in complete disbelief at the outcome. The last few years of different stories and the savagery that had been displayed throughout had finally caught up. Some felt sympathy for her, saying that someone in her state of mind, with very little education, constantly being battered, didn't have much of a choice in the matter. Others felt it was very much a calculated move on her behalf. She showed no emotion when speaking about what they had done, and she was smart enough to lie multiple times to try and throw investigators off. Where was all this emotion then? Some even voiced their strong opinions by saying that even animals know to protect their young, and low intelligence shouldn't ever be seen as a valid excuse to take a child's life. The images portrayed of Emiliano by her defense team and prosecutors clashed. Some people didn't know what to believe, but the one thing that everyone could agree on was that this adorable and healthy baby girl did not deserve to get caught up in whatever these two were going through. She had no say, no control, and no way to defend herself. She could have been given up for adoption, where she could have possibly been placed with a loving family who would never harm her. They never even gave her a chance at life. While some spend years wishing they could experience parenthood and the beauty of childbirth, this baby was discarded and thrown into an early grave as if she didn't matter to anyone. The one and only person who paid with their short life was baby Brigid, no one else. While these two could continue to breathe fresh air, live their lives, and eventually be let out, this child would never get a second chance. She was taken from this world almost just as fast as she entered it by two people with their own selfish concerns. On August 27th of 2012, Galino Emiliano was released on parole, and on April 23rd of 2021, Fortino Perez was also released on parole. It's unclear if his brother, who dug the child's grave, ever did any time for his role. Whether you believe that this was a mother who truly feared for her life, or that she was well aware of what she was doing to her child, the end result remains the same. An innocent child had their life cut short, and the person arrested for the crime should have been protecting her. 100 more reasons can be brought forth about why this happened, and it wouldn't change the fact that not only was it allowed, it was never brought to the attention of authorities. Maybe she felt guilt, and that's why she told doctors about the child dying. Maybe she just said the truth because she wasn't expecting to be questioned about the child at all, and she just said what came to mind. It doesn't change the efforts that were made to hide this crime, the words used to try to make it seem less horrific, the efforts made to have it go completely unnoticed. I feel for baby Bridget's sister, who was born in prison, another innocent child in all of this. No matter what any of us may feel, there's no changing this outcome. No child should ever have to suffer such a cruel fate. While she only lived for a mere 2 days back in 1993, baby Bridget's story is still relevant over 3 decades later, where cases like this are reported on and often forgotten, and happening way more often than we know. But her memory will live on. She didn't have a chance to ever say her first words or ever take a first step. She didn't feel that unconditional love and protection every child needs. She felt the exact opposite, and nobody was there to protect her in her final moments. A prime and morbid example of what can happen when the voiceless is left in the hands of the heartless. If still alive today, she would be 31 years old. Rest in peace, baby Brigid. You aren't forgotten.